tell you what,
It's not like the olden days.
I'm Rosie.
I'm Jake.
And today we're going to talk to you about Fort Boyard, which is a bit like the Crystal Maze and gladiators and that sort of thing, which we've been talking about recently.
Yes, having seen Fort Boyard for the first time and thought, oh, this is very like the Crystal Maze, it's not surprising to learn that the Crystal Maze was based on the original idea of Fort Boyard, which was originated in France in 1990. Crystal Maze first aired here in 1990, so really the Crystal Maze was our version of Fort Boyard for a while, until Channel 5 came along and decided to make another version of Fort Boyard, which was actually Fort Boyard, the show on UK television.
The French came up with it, didn't it? It is a French fort, and you know all the history of it, don't you?
Yes, well, it's a Napoleonic fort, and it had become somewhat redundant, I don't think, very long after it was built, and no one quite knew what to do with it for years, centuries maybe. And then in 1988 it was turned into a TV studio with miles and miles of cable, facilities and things put all over it. And since 1990, the French have been using it over the summer to make Fort Boyard TV game show. And other countries have been encouraged and invited to join in and make their own version of the show.
Well, using the original name of the fort, of course. I mean, you wouldn't rename it Fort Boyard for the TV because it wouldn't mean anything, would it?
And it has become an iconic name, an iconic place. As everyone knows, it's off the west coast of France, in the Bay of Biscay sort of thing.
So what happens there now? Well, they do get sometimes two teams to compete against each other. The Channel 5 version was one team just to see what they could win, like the Crystal Maze, and they do things like bungee jumping, tightrope walking, trying to get things out of places, riddles, using the whole of the fort and the surrounding and the underneath it ocean, which is very fun. And when this country started making their own episodes, it was all to have a show to put on Channel 5, wasn't it? Sort of like Countdown in Channel 4.
Yes, we've discussed before how Channel 5, when it was quite new, sometimes thought very hard about how to fit its schedules and bought things like The Adventures of Sinbad, and they really went out on a limb in the summer of 98 and made their own Fort Boyard TV series, and it was a big success for them, fortunately, and they actually made 4 series of it in 98, 99, 2000 and 2001.
Not quite as enduring as Countdown, but not bad. And shall we talk about the gang?
Yeah.
Well, it was presented by Melinda Messenger, who was known as someone who posed on page 3 of the tabloids with no top on, as far as I'm aware.
Yes, that's right. I think it was only the previous year, 1997, she'd been very much in the public eye, and she'd done that tour of the country over the summer on Melinda Messenger's bus.
So she had done something else, I wasn't actually sure. But actually, she's not just a pretty face and a pair of implants, she's very engaging, and actually it turns out she's very clever as well. And she's got 5 A-levels or something, but I don't know how much that was really useful for presenting Fort Boyard, but she was very good at advising the contestants on how to play the games, and she always used to like them to be methodical, which I approved of, like if you've got a certain amount of boxes to look through or pots to stick your hand in, do it in the right order, a logical order, that kind of thing. And she was also very good at engaging with the contestants and having a laugh with them and putting her arm around them if they came out of the snake pit absolutely freaking out or something. So she was an excellent choice.
Yes. Channel 5, in setting up their Fort Boyard cast, did something that happens occasionally and came across a very lucky accident for something that works really, really well. Obviously, with Melinda Messenger, they wanted someone popular, well-known, someone known for being attractive.
What did you call her?
A titty woman.
A titty woman when you were summing up this point you're making now.
And that's what they wanted her for. They thought, right, we'll have a titty woman presenting it, and then some actor who's known for being grouchy and evil almost on the television play Boyard, the sort of backup presenter or character at the fort, master of the fort. And so for that, as everyone knows, they got Leslie Grantham, who was still famous at that point and is now for playing Dirty Den on EastEnders, even though it had been almost 10 years since he'd left when he started being Boyard. And little did they know that by getting this actor who was famous for being grouchy on television and this titty woman, they would actually get a fantastic presenting duo with great chemistry, who both did their jobs individually and together so very well. And really magic happened when they came together on the show, completely by accident, because I'm quite sure they were recruited from the point of view of, oh yes, Melinda Messenger, she's popular and attractive, Leslie Grantham, he's Dirty Den, they'll do. But yes, magic happens sometimes without really meaning to, and that was one time, definitely.
The role of Boyard is the sort of thing you like, isn't it? Where he is a sort of fictional character / real-life presenter, and the premise of the game show is that you go to the fort and try to win his gold, and he makes it as difficult as possible for you because he doesn't want you to take his gold.
Yes, I do like that sort of thing. And it's the only real attempt or aspect in the show, some kind of fantasy coming in, creeping in. They're not trying to, even to the extent that Ed did in the Crystal Maze, they're not trying to say that Fort Boyard is some kind of fantasy world or anything. But obviously, if they're saying here's Leslie Grantham, he's Boyard, he's the master of the fort, part of the fort, it's his gold, that's some sort of little fantasy element creeping in, which is quite nice. And does add to the fun.
And all the denizens of the fort work for him, don't they, willingly or otherwise? I think we should talk about Geoffrey Belden now.
Yes, Geoffrey Belden, who very obligingly passed away at the age of 93 in the same month we're recording this, just so we could mention it. But he also added perfectly to the presenting team. Obviously they got him because, he's an eccentric old man, he'll make a really good professor, and that's true, he did, but he just fits in so perfectly.
And he is Boyard's prisoner, isn't he, up in the watchtower, which presumably is where a French person used to stand to see if anyone was coming to invade.
Very nice use of the watchtower there.
They would see him, I think, 3 times initially, wouldn't they?
Yes, they did have 2 riddles initially. And then later, clue word from her.
What you need to do is you have to win 4 keys to open the treasure room, and then you have to get a clue word, and we'll talk a bit more about that later, I expect, in more detail. But to win the keys, you have to do various challenges, and as you said, you get 2 riddles from the professor, and those sorts of ones are a sort of like brain teaser thing, aren't they? Like, for instance, this sounds cold, but it's not. It's exceedingly hot, I remember. And what's the answer?
Chilly. I always remember on the celebrity version, Troy Titus Adams from EastEnders being very pleased with herself for getting "This is the way to comprehend 6 feet deep as you descend." Fathom, fathom.
Very good. She knows both meanings of the word fathom.
Yeah.
And another one I remember was when I was babysitting someone and he got it before I did. I was very impressed, which was something to do with two sorts of bacon and a game, and it's backgammon. That's quite clever. So it was that sort of thing, and in that first series you got two of those, but then after that you only got the one, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you ended up seeing the Professor twice, not necessarily the same contestant. I got a funny feeling in the first series it always was the same contestant.
Yeah, I think in the first series they filmed the two riddles together with the same contestant and then patched it back in later and it didn't look that good.
But anyway, shall we talk about some of the other things they had to do to get keys?
Yes. I remember you saying that the most fun challenges were where the cells were decorated like a little world that the contestant was stepping into, like the one where you hurl yourself against the lever thing in the padded cell and you go flopping back and forth and move the key up.
I love that because it's a padded cell like in, I'm not sure what you're supposed to call them nowadays, a lunatic asylum. And you're hurling yourself at this thing trying to get the key, and you really might start to think, am I really on Fort Boyard, or am I in the loony bin?
Fun little worlds they create in the cells, a bit like the Crystal Maze really, which is rather nice.
Another one is where you have to go and rob the museum, isn't it? You have to get round it without touching the floor and triggering the alarm and get the key that way.
And there's a couple where you would go in and get the key straight off and then have to do something in order to get out, like when you have to stack all the books to make the ceiling not be blocking the door anymore.
Yes, and one that I enjoyed watching it within living memory on the first time around, I don't remember seeing it the first time around, is where you have to slide down this slide thing and get the key, and then you have to climb back up, and there are these tiny far apart hand and foot holes, and I think one person did it and one person didn't do it. And then that was the only two times they played it. But inevitably with that kind of game, they're trying to get out, they've got the key, the time's running out, and then some stupid person goes, oh, come out, oh, can you get him out? Well, no, if you could get out, you would have as soon as you got the key.
Just like sometimes on the Crystal Maze, that sort of thing will happen. Darn contestants.
While we're on the subject of getting locked in, there isn't actually a penalty, is there? You lose the contestant for a bit, but so what? You don't sacrifice anything that you've won, and the rest of the team carry on and do the games and get the keys. So adapting that idea for the Crystal Maze, where you buy them out with a crystal, is better or makes more sense. But then in Fort Boyard, a key really is worth more than a contestant, isn't it? You need 4 to get this door open. If you sacrifice one, that's a quarter of what you need.
It's just rather fun to see Monsieur Le Boule take the contestants away and lock them up in his cages. And yes, it's not really part of the gameplay at all.
And sometimes they're running around the fort and they'll run past them in the cages and Melinda will go, oh, hello, Steve, or whatever. It's just quite good fun.
And speaking of Le Boule, who is in the show, one of Boyard's sort of underlings, some of the games contain characters who will try and stop you get the key, like the mud wrestling woman and the one with the strongest man in France pushing round the sort of capstan and you have to push against him.
That's a bit harsh, isn't it? The strongest man in France.
Yes.
And the lady with no clothes on who's got tattoos, but they're probably not permanent ones in real life, and you have to look all over her boobies and things and try to find the keyword. Although in the challenge version, which we'll tell you about, she puts on a bra. And the man who does the swizzing round the pots, and you have to say which one's got the thing under it.
Ah, yeah. He's sneaky because he takes it and puts it in his hand and then puts it under a different pot.
Yes, the trick with that, even if he doesn't do that, the guy, it's always a man whenever I see them, will do some sort of sleight of hand. So if you go for either of the ones you don't think it is, you've got a 50% chance of getting it right, but don't go for the one you think it is.
Good tip that, given that he will have swapped it. Yeah, there's all sorts of great memorable challenges, like the hand bike.
That one where you have to pull a sword out of, I don't think it is a stone, is it? Is it a sort of tree stuff? And then you have to use it to cut through this big piece of rope. The one where the lady has to get on the man's shoulders and they have to whack the what they call trapdoors, and Melinda tells you to be methodical, because if you go through them in order, you have time to get to the last one, and the key's always in the last one. But if you don't, you're just walking around and there's stuff in these trapdoors like jam and flour and you get covered in stuff but you never get to the key.
And that's one of those ones which is quite different from the Crystal Maze, where two contestants go in and play it. You never get that on the Crystal Maze.
Yeah, there are a few like that, aren't there? Like there's the one where the lady has to go in the sort of cage thing and the man has to pull out the peg to lift it up to the top so she can get the key. And the one where two strong men go in and they have to saw through this big log with a sort of rusty saw that's on this elastic, so it's pulling away from them all the time.
And what a lot of fun those are.
Oh, and I know. The one which is impossible, where you have to each hold a giant chopstick
Oh, yeah.
and move the pots and put them in these bins. It's so impossible to control that.
That's a nice, fun little world. It's like a sort of incense-filled Chinese takeaway or something.
That's right. And if you're doing really badly, they give you the challenge where you have to stick your hand in various pots of things like somebody's hand and gooey things until you find the key. And if you're stupid, you don't do them methodically, so you don't get to the key in time, or you stand there going, and don't put your hand in, and then you don't get to the key in time. But anyone who doesn't do that is silly.
And of course the Professor's key is a guaranteed key when they start doing, which might not be in the first series, where he chucks it into the sea if you get the riddle wrong, and another contestant swims for it. And it depends what the weather's like, how easy that is, and it just eats into the time.
Yes, it does indeed eat into the time. That's really the point of it, isn't it? And it's usually a strong man who does that, so I'm quite glad when once or twice a woman did it. But yes, sometimes the sea is absolutely raging and you have to swim practically to France proper before you can get it.
So even once 4 keys are in the treasure room door is now unlocked, but it won't open until the gong sounds. And by then they need to know the password. So they then go on and do more challenges, which are sometimes called adventures, but I prefer, I think Rosie does too, ordeals.
Ordeals is a much nicer word because they give them things that they're frightened to do, and it fits in more with the idea of Boyard trying to stop them. I suspect adventure is the French word. Maybe it's a word that in French means something a bit less pleasant than adventure, and it's a bit of a mistranslation, but I think Leslie Grantham and Melinda were using that in the first series, and then they changed it to ordeals.
You get your first clue word, as we were mentioning, by another riddle from the Professor, a 3-part riddle, and often they don't get it, and they have to think about it for the rest of the time, and sometimes it covers with it.
That's true. One thing they do often is fixate on one part of it. One I do remember is, if you've got nothing on tonight, you're probably this. And something about truths that you don't want to hear, which I suppose both fit with naked, don't they? So maybe this person was fixating on 2 parts of the riddle. And I can't remember the third one, but do you know what that was? It wasn't naked, it was home. So that was quite clever. So yes, that's the sort of thing you would get, but I actually can't think of an example where they would fixate on one part that doesn't fit with the others. But you can imagine that they would.
And then all the other ordeals are rather fun as well, like having to go through with just your head sticking out, all these cages with mosquitoes and maggots and God knows what in them. And Boyard revelling in their discomfort is rather fun and rather good.
Things like bungee jumping and tightrope walking, like I was mentioning earlier. With the tightrope walking, you're very much tied onto your not-so-tight rope. It's quite springy, actually, and balanced with a rope above you and that kind of thing. You're not expected to be like a professional. And those kinds of height challenges that a lot of people don't like to do. Other ones involve swimming in the sea, sometimes under the fort, sometimes around the fort, and that's why I was saying they use the whole of the fort and the surrounding ocean. And they also do, kind of like the one where you go through with your head sticking through in the cages, animal related ones, like you have to get half the word off a spider and half off a scorpion, or you have to get half off a snake and half off another snake. And a conversation that people like to have is, oh, if you had to do one of the ordeals, which one would you do? And if I had to do one, I'd do the snakes one, because I have handled snakes before. I think I'm okay with it. But then people think they're okay with things, and you just never know how it's going to be when you get into the situation. Even if you've been in a similar situation before, it's going to be a bit different. People might think they're fine with heights, but then it turns out they don't want a tightrope walk across the fort. You just don't know.
And of course it was always fun trying to work out the password, the one word that would go before or after all the clue words to create a new word or familiar expression. And if we see them repeated on challenge now, we generally remember what the password is going to be, as well as work it out.
I think that's very interesting, because we don't really remember the contestants or whether they're going to win the challenges or how they're going to do, but what has stuck with us is the sort of word game aspect.
And it's very good and atmospheric, the treasure room with its little sequence of events where they spell out what they think it is on the floor. And Melinda says, well, Boyard, are they right? And he says, right, there's more chance of, and something funny and impossible.
Lucilla Ball winning Miss World and that kind of thing.
And then when the password's shell, and Melinda says, are they right? And Boyard says, shall we see? It's terribly funny.
You're not expecting that at all.
No, but just the way they do it is fantastic and entertaining.
If they don't get the password in time, of course, then they sacrifice someone, they put them down a hole, and they pass up another clue. Or am I thinking of the key? When you get more clue words, you stick your hand in the tiger thing. Yeah, if you need an extra key, you sit out the ordeals, but again, that's not a huge disadvantage until you get to the treasure room, because for either reason, if you're missing a contestant, it's one less pair of hands to collect the gold with, and it's also one more cannonball to faff about with, because you have to stand on and put cannonballs on the letters of the word that you're spelling out.
But they usually get it right eventually, even if they've had to sacrifice a couple of people and they don't get much gold in the Leslie Grantham Belinda Messenger series. I remember when we watched the first series on Challenge, there was more failures, complete failures, not getting the password at all, than in probably series 2, 3 and 4. But one that is from later is where the password is sports.
Like sports car, sports jacket, that sort of thing. Winter sports.
Blood sports. And they spell out sport, which is just stupid carelessness. And then, of course, there's the Grantham Bees all, you've got my gold, or ha ha ha, you haven't got my gold. And it's great fun. And I can quite see why Channel 5 came back and made 4 series of that, because I'm sure it was very popular.
Of course, the annoying thing that they do is not realise when the treasure room door is closing, either because they've got their word wrong or because they've run out of time and they just stand in the treasure chamber.
Stupid contestant.
But of course what happens, if you are in the treasure room after the door closes, is that you get eaten by tigers, apparently. And Monique is the lady who looks after the tigers, and she tells them when they're supposed to go into the other bit of the room, and they listen to her, so she's obviously some sort of tiger trainer. And in the first series, she wasn't there, was she? She was having a baby.
That's right.
So they got this guy, and his name was Tiger Master, I think, so they didn't bother using his name or thinking up a special Fort Boyard name for him.
Yes. If you watch the first series of Channel 5 Fort Boyard, you might think that Monique is new for the second series, but that's technically not true. She's been on the French version since, I think, the second series, like 1991, and she had a couple of maternity leave years, one of them, coincidentally, being the first year that Melinda Messenger and Leslie Grantham went there, 1998, and she had another one in the noughties as well, for another baby. I can't remember which year that was. And the other main Boyard servants, we should mention, are the dwarfs, of course. And Jack really is, in many ways, Fort Boyard personified, because he's been in many versions of the show, originally the French one, since it started. He's really called André Boucher, I think, but in the English version we call him Jacques. And in the French I think he's Passepartout, but it doesn't really matter what he's called. He's there doing all the shepherding work and looking after the keys and having a bit of fun with the presenters, prodding the contestants around.
Yes, he gets a bit officious, telling them where they're supposed to stand. And in that first series, as far as I remember, he's got as his partner dwarf somebody called Jules in the show, is that right? So they're called Jack and Jules?
Yeah.
But then he leaves, doesn't he? And gets replaced with Denis, which isn't alliterative with Jack or Jacques, but never mind.
Yes, I did read the exact details once and was moderately interested. Jules, as you can tell if you watch the first series of Melinda and Friends, is a bit older than Jacques, and after 1998 he retired from the international shows, but continued doing the French version till about 2010, I think, when he retired completely, and Denis took over the international show, so that's why he's all over most of Melinda and Leslie Grantham. But I think he's also taken over the French version since Jules, or as he was in French, Passepartout, I believe, retired completely.
I liked him, by the way, taking the contestants up to do the riddle. They unlock the door, take them up, hold the timer so that they know how much time they have to answer the riddle. And he used to laugh with the contestants and Geoffrey Belden about the stupid answers that the contestants gave and that kind of thing. And that sort of presenting, even in a relatively minor role, can make a huge difference to the viewing experience.
Yes, absolutely. It creates that lovely balance of playing the part and presenting the show, which I talked about in relation to Treguard and probably Raven in passing at times. Well, those 4 series that Channel 5 made are absolutely wonderful, and I remember particularly watching the 4th one in the latter stages of 2001 on Saturday nights it was on, and enjoying that. I was doing something during the week that I wasn't enjoying at all. And then when we finally got Challenge in 2004, which you can hear about in great detail in other podcasts, Fort Boyard, all 4 series was all over that, and we discovered that Challenge themselves had actually gone out on a limb and been over to Fort Boyard in the summer of 2003 and made their own series, very much in the same vein as the Melinda Messenger Leslie Grantham series, but unfortunately Challenge didn't get lucky with their presenting team, even though on paper it probably should be just as successful as Melinda Messenger, Leslie Grantham and Geoffrey Belden. But they very much came at it from the same angle. They got Jodie Penfold to present. It's not exactly a titty woman, quite slim and small, but
more of a leggy woman, I think.
A leggy woman. An attractive, blonde, bubbly, bright woman they wanted to have to present the show, and she's certainly very fun about it, and she's not Melinda, but she's certainly amusing and doesn't do a bad job at all presenting it.
Yes, I quite like her. My first instinct was to think, she's not as good as Melinda. She's very different from Melinda and arguably not as good, but yes, she is appealing in her way.
Unfortunately, and it's quite unlucky, she doesn't gel so well with the Boyard that Challenge found. And as I say, they'd obviously come at it from very much the same angle because they got Chris Ellison, who was also famous for playing a grouchy, grumpy character on the television, Burnside on the bill. But as it happens, Leslie Grantham was absolutely perfectly suited to being Boyard and obviously having a lot of fun with it, but never coming out of character of being very demure, but also very amusing. And Chris Ellison just didn't seem to have the skills to do that. It wasn't particularly threatening, and he does sort of come out of character too much and laugh with them, and he just doesn't create the same Boyard character.
Yes, that's partly him. It's partly the directing as well, because he runs with them to the first challenge, which Boyard never used to do when he was Leslie Grantham. He used to stalk off looking grumpy and just sort of be there when they arrived. And also he stands and waves with them at the end, which Leslie Grantham never used to do.
So I suppose it's a different approach, and by unlucky circumstance, it just doesn't work so well with the people they've chosen to do it either. I can quite see their thinking in getting Tom Baker in to be the eccentric old man character in the Watchtower, and this time it's the captain, the eccentric old sea captain, rather than the professor. But again, he just doesn't quite engage with it so well as Geoffrey Belden did, and they do give Tom Baker some very strange lines that he sort of garbles out to us that are supposed to be funny and aren't.
I mean, he doesn't make anything of them, does he?
No.
I think he thinks that they're rather stupid and refuses to read them properly.
So the captain comes across as very strange, and he's not so good at interacting with the contestants when he's asking them riddles and things. I remember when we first watched The Silver Chair, I think Rosie was quite surprised by how much she liked Tom Baker as Puddleglum, because she hadn't seen him in anything she'd enjoyed him in before.
Yes, in that episode of Blackadder 2 that he's in, I didn't actually realise it was him, because he looks very different. He's younger, he's got a ginger beard on. So I had no idea that was him, and yes, Fort Boyard made me think I didn't like Tom Baker, but actually he's very good at everything else he does.
So yes, it's on paper the right people to do it in the same way as Leslie, Melinda and Geoffrey, but it just didn't come together and didn't work. Having said that, you've still got the challenges and the ordeals, and it's still good to watch. They did make the game play harder for the challenge version, and the money, gold you earn at the end seems to be worth a lot less than it was on Channel 5. Channel 5, despite its inferiority at the time, was still a terrestrial channel, even though not many people get it. Obviously, Challenge didn't have as much of a budget, and it did show in the prize money and also in the fact that it was harder to get to the gold because you needed 5 keys instead of 4. They always ended up with hardly any time to gather clue words, and they sometimes end up with only 1 or 2, and the clue words themselves, I think, were much more obscure a lot of the time.
That one that was battle, we found difficult, didn't we?
The answer to the captain's riddle for the password being battle was cruiser. Now, how are you supposed to get cruiser as an answer to a riddle? That's never going to come, is it?
No, I can't imagine what the questions were.
No. And it's unfortunate in that one, isn't it, that they don't have Boyard saying the password was over the treasure room sequence, but you have the captain saying it at the end and he's out of the tower, which doesn't really fit in with him being the prisoner.
Yes, I don't think they actually say he is a prisoner, do they? Boyard says that he's his old mate. It's like he's doing it as a favour to him.
So it just doesn't all gel as well as it used to, and it does come across as a bit of an inferior copy in many ways. But they only made 1 series of that challenge. Obviously they realised, well, there it is and it's not worth making any more. Now, the UK was away from Fort Boyard from the summer of 2003, when Challenge made that, until the summer of 2011, when CITV and an American company, I don't know which one, collaborated to make Fort Boyard Ultimate Challenge, using 13 to 19-year-olds as contestants. And they actually filmed in that summer of 2011 2 series of very short 20-minute episodes, which was obviously what the Americans wanted for their television, because then when we came back, the British, and did it without them, we made proper full-length hour-long episodes.
Yes, they did seem incredibly short, those American half-hour time slot ones, which only comes to about 20 minutes, doesn't it, really? We were saying, isn't that strange? They really haven't given themselves very much time. And then I think I said, probably they just don't make kids' game shows longer than this in America.
Yeah. Well, it does follow the more traditional format, like the French have always used, of having two teams against each other. And in those first two series, back-to-back series, you get, don't you, 3 team head-to-head challenges each, and 1 individual team challenge each. So sometimes they'd be ending up with no keys, and the maximum was 4, and the maximum time in the treasure chamber was 3.
And then if you won the 4th key, you got some bonus gold, didn't you?
That's right. And they got to present it Laura Hamilton from Britain, who sounds quite strange doing all the American written voiceovers, which they made her do.
Yes, it's funny. I don't think we really noticed that till we watched the repeats and we've been used to her talking naturally in British English.
When she says a load of something in his face he got, we realised in American that was just meant to be a load, like an expulsion, but she made it a load, as in a lot.
Yes, you would, wouldn't you? I was quite interested to see that it was Laura Hamilton because I'd recently seen her getting to the final, I think, of Dancing on Ice. And I thought, Dancing on Ice has done well for giving her some exposure, and she was on there as a celebrity because she'd done a couple of slots doing some kind of obscure presenting on Nicktoons or something at about 11:30 when no one watches Nicktoons. So that certainly worked for her going on Dancing on Ice.
And the American presenter, and therefore inevitably main presenter, was Gino Seggers, that's his name, isn't it? And he is a large, muscular man with a very, very deep voice, and I can see why he's entertaining and fun as a children's presenter. And he had a lot of fun doing it and interacting with the contestants, saying, "That tells a little tour on you, Chief."
Yes.
"Mama, that boy can ride." Very amusing.
He was a good choice for a show that was also British because he's a lot more genuine than you might expect from an American presenter. Thinking about, for example, that Funhouse presenter who we mentioned on our podcast about Funhouse.
Hey, good luck with that.
He would genuinely, rather than just spout what seemed the appropriate response that had been programmed in, he would genuinely say things that were appropriate to the situation.
That's right, Laura.
Yes, that's an American auto-cue thing.
Yes, when they were introducing the show.
They seem to do that American, what they call anchor, men and women reading the news. One of them reads the news and the other one goes, "That's right, Diane." So yes, it certainly had a lot of American in it, but not too much that you didn't want to watch it.
The Blue Sharks are going to be good at every challenge, which is why we're going to win.
Yes, there were some very amusing American contestants, weren't they? And it's okay to laugh at them like this because they laugh at the British in exactly the same way.
Yeah, so we've been saying, "Oh my God, look at those British kids, of course, Boyard." But what are the other teams apart from the Blue Sharks? Silver Dragons, which is not really a real animal, a bit weird. Red Vipers, Yellow Scorpions, Green Jaguars, and the White Falcon. I always thought the Blue Sharks was the best name of those. It's actually the name of a real animal, the blue shark, and even if it wasn't, it would be a better colour to go with the animal than green jaguars and yellow scorpions. I mean, they're not really matched up properly, are they?
No.
But the colours were nice on the t-shirts anyway.
Yeah, sort of cargo trousers and your team colour t-shirt. Very good uniform. Much more flattering than lycra shorts and tight tops with your boobs or your pecs spilling out and your thighs as well and your buttocks sometimes in some games that the adults used to have to wear.
So that's one reason why it was more fun with children, but like the Crystal Maze, I think the young people, teenagers, are often much more watchable and much less egotistical and stupid about things than the adults.
You know, no child ever chickened out of a bungee jump, which the adults would frequently do. They always give it a go.
So on the whole, I think they are better to watch on it, really, even the American ones.
Yes, what I didn't like about that American series was that there were 3 boys and 1 girl on each team, and in fact, each team, if they weren't in the final, would play 3 shows, and in all those 3 shows, the girl would usually do 1 challenge, and the 2 strong boys would do at least 1 challenge per show, and the slightly less strong boy maybe do 2 throughout the whole run. And I don't know if all the teams structure like that: a girl, 2 strong boys, and a slightly less strong boy. I'm thinking of one in particular, I think. But they certainly had their favourite contestants, and it was never the girl, and that is sexist, because girls are quite as capable of doing most of those kinds of challenges. There aren't a lot of upper body strength challenges that they have to do. If they do, okay, give it to a boy. Although sometimes they gave those to boys who didn't have good upper body strength, did they?
Yes, the contestant choice is not always the best.
With the British version, teams had 2 girls, 2 boys, and everybody did something in each contest.
Yes, they are good to watch, those first 2 American collaboration series, but it's no bad thing, really, that obviously the American company decided, oh no, we don't want to do any more. And CITV said, right, well, we're going to do some more by ourselves then. And in the summer of 2012, 13 and 14, CITV was there at Fort Boyard making its own series. This time, 1 series at a time in the hour time slot. One thing that's better. As Rosie was mentioning, the allocation of challenges to different team members was better, and the actual gender split of the teams, 2 of each on each team, was better. And they, of course, had to find a new male presenter, and they got Andy off Blue Peter, which was a very good choice. He was very good at it, very good at interacting, looking after the teams, and fitted in well with Laura, and they made a great presenting duo.
As well as being able to get in more content in the longer time slot, you actually got to know the teams a bit more, didn't you, and get behind them and decide who you liked.
That's right, and in that Series 3, the first one with Andy, I liked the Blue Sharks very much. Very engaging, very good, strong, competent team. So it's nice to really get to know one and get behind it and support it, whatever the final result.
Of course, I do have one problem with all these Fort Boyard Ultimate Challenge teams, and I think you agree with me. The way that in their testimonials, so they're talking to the camera about their experience, 92% of the time they will say, oh, I thought it was going to be really easy, or oh, I've seen it on TV and it looks so easy, or you're watching at home, aren't you, thinking, oh, it looks so easy, I could do that, that's easy. Oh, but it's not, you don't realise till you get here. And I think they're obviously finding life too easy if they don't realise that things are not as easy as they look, and they expect to have an easy time.
Yes, that's a shame, and they're underestimators. And you do get it a lot.
As well as what I just said, you get a lot of, it was a lot harder than I thought it would be, it was a lot higher than I thought it would be, it was a lot colder than I thought it would be, that kind of thing. So that's annoying. It does remind me of when I was marking some GCSE writing exams, and it said write about a time you found something more difficult than you expected. And all these 16-year-olds were writing about how bungee jumping was more difficult than they expected, and rock climbing was more difficult than they expected. And I thought, well, it's not just the kids on Fort Boyard, then it's all of them. And I could go into a right old rant about how today's world makes kids think that things are easier than they really are.
That's one way in which it's a shame that they're not making it anymore. Give some of these kids a harsh dose of reality. It was fun on Ultimate Challenge, seeing some of the old challenges back. The French still have them set up. Sometimes with slight adaptations, like the one where you used to crawl across the rollers and show your cleavage, had been painted to look like candy and was now Candy Roll. And then they do various things with running water, don't they, where you run on the conveyor belt and pick up the buckets. It turned into a fire station at one point.
Another triumph for Troy Titus Adams, that one, wasn't it?
Indeed it was, yes.
They think running water looks easy. It does not. It looks impossible.
Series 3 and 4 used those same team names from the American series, and then for Series 5 in 2014, which turned out to be the final series, at least to date, and probably forever, they introduced a whole load of new team names, which was a little strange.
Some pedant had come along and said, well, only the Blue Sharks is a real animal. We need to come up with team names where the colour matches the animal.
And in that series, you have the Golden Eagles, which is an actual name of an animal, which is good, and then the other colours do match the animals as well. What are
With
the
one
others?
exception, the burgundy cobras.
Oh yes, burgundy cobras. What is that all about? Purple feet, as I thought they were from first seeing their symbol, but no, they were cobras.
Purple feet makes more sense than burgundy cobras, if you ask me.
The black tarantulas, fine. Grey rhinos, green crocs, orange tigers.
Yeah, those are all fine.
It's interesting how they named one of the teams Tigers in that series. They had brought the Tigers into Fort Boyard Ultimate Challenge for Series 4. They didn't feature them in the first three series, but then in the final two they like to have them stalking about and just adding a bit of atmosphere, which was good fun.
Maybe that's up to the French. They tell you have to have tigers. I mean, who knows?
Yes, they could have had a new policy in, 2013, where you couldn't opt out of having them, even if you didn't want them really in your gameplay, particularly.
I like the tigers. I'm glad they were there. Being a cat lover, they're great fun, particularly if the contestants are playing a game where they have to be dangling over the treasure room for some reason, and the tigers are looking at them, wishing they'd fall in so they could bat them round.
Who did we like in Series 4? The Green Jaguars. Spoilers, they actually won the series.
They had that contestant called Elias, who was a big, strong man, as their team captain Sophie said. We think he's faking his age. And I think she may have been right, and he won absolutely everything he did. There was a blowing up a balloon underwater challenge. He blew up very nearly the entire thing in one breath, and then a little puff to finish it. And he could even do ones he didn't seem to be particularly suited to, like carefully going round the museum to steal the key.
Yes, Elias could do everything, and it's not surprising that his team won a lot on the strength of him. But they certainly deserved it. The best and most engaging team in the series.
Yes, other members of the team did win a lot of keys too, it has to be said.
Unlike in Series 3, where the Green Jaguars won, which is a sticking point for me, because I think the Blue Sharks were robbed in that series, but I don't want to talk about it a lot. And then in Series 5, we both enjoyed the Purple Feet, the Burgundy Cobras. Not a very good, competent team at all, but great fun.
Yes, they certainly had a lot of personality and presence.
And the Black Tarantulas, the winners of the series, certainly did deserve to win that series. They were overall by far the best team. It appeared from the Crocodiles' first appearance that they were as good as the Tarantulas, but then their other two episodes are not very good at all. And the Rhinos were in the final with the Tarantulas, but that was rather lucky. They almost sneak the win, don't they? But not quite, which is definitely the right thing to happen.
Yes, the Tarantulas were a very good team. They took it really quite seriously, a couple of them, I thought. I suppose a couple of them had more fun than others, but Harry, the army man, who did crawling on his elbows through tunnels quite a lot, he was taking it awfully seriously, I thought.
That's probably why we enjoy the Cobras more, because they were just having a lot of fun.
Of course, Finton was desperate to win as much keys as possible and went absolutely mad when things were going well or when they weren't going so well, but that's all part of his personality.
Yes, I hope someone has helped Finton to channel his emotions effectively in the past 3 years. Because they could be used to very great effect, rather than standing there redundantly shouting.
Of course, he did use his determination to win a key that seemed to be lost at one time, didn't he?
Yes, that's right. So that just goes to prove such determination can be a very good thing, if only it can be turned in the right direction. So as you can tell there, we certainly got involved with the teams and various team members who we enjoyed in various ways. It was quite disappointing when it was announced in 2015 that the ITV decided they couldn't be bothered to make any more.
And it must have been an effort, mustn't it?
Well, it must have been an effort, and they don't really make new children's telly anymore, as a matter of course. It was quite a surprise that they were bothering to do it, and it's very good that they did bother to do it. It's a shame that they thought suddenly, oh well, probably enough, we can just repeat it all. Because it was a very good thing to do, and a very good thing to produce, and they should still be doing it today, really, but there we are. At least they did it. So who knows if we will ever see another British production back at Fort Boyard. I mean, there was an 8-year gap between Jodie Penfold being there and Laura Hamilton being there. Who's to say in another few years we won't be back there again, making another Fort Boyard show of some description? That's certainly something to look out for. And it wouldn't be as surprising to see as it was when Fort Boyard Ultimate Challenge came along, because there's now a precedent for it. Although we probably will never see it again, given the state of the television nowadays. And there is the end of our Fort Boyard podcast. Join us again next time on the final Sunday in June for our podcast on The Incredible Hulk. Chiefly the 1977 TV series and its follow-up movies, but a little word about some later attempts to do The Incredible Hulk as well. I remember promising you that podcast to come sometime this year, and now that promise will be kept. Until then,
Good night out there.
whatever you are.